the necklace just...
I wish we could take a video of him every time we do this. I'm sorry. Everything that you said is true about the present times, that we're living in a time where our values and principles are being denigrated, and we live in a world where by nature it's becoming more hostile towards imagination and ideas. And sometimes it seems as if we need to be deprived of imagination and ideas, like the way I saw it happen in Iran. When people were deprived of them, they realized that they cannot literally live without them. We need in our communities to be talking about these matters and not just question the corrupt leaders and the world, but to question ourselves. I think that this is the time where imagination and ideas become so central, because we, each of us, have to ask ourselves, what happened? What did we do that we are now where we are? Without asking the right questions, we won't have the right answers. And it seems as if everybody has the answers, but they don't have the question. So I think that this is the best time for books. Well, fiction does so many things to us on so many levels. On one level, it takes us to a world which we don't know, and it puts us in places that we need to discover, and it makes us meet strangers that we have never met. Through that, it makes us look at ourselves through the eyes of the strangers and see things about ourselves that we have not seen before. A lot of times we're blind about ourselves. We look into the mirror, but we only see a reflection. While looking at yourself through the eyes of a Tolstoy or a Nabokov or a Baldwin or a Jane Austen, or Najib Mahfouz, we gain a new perspective into ourselves. I always think of Alice in Wonderland. To begin with, you need to be curious. You need to want to know something that you haven't seen or you haven't heard. So out of all the little girls in the world, Alice is the only one who sees not just a white rabbit, but a white rabbit who's wearing a waistcoat and who's talking and saying, I'm late, I'm late. And without thinking, she runs after that white rabbit. And once she runs after that white rabbit and jumps down the hole, she sees the wonderland. But that wonderland is made of the ordinary things in her life. Only she sees those ordinary things in her life through new eyes. And when she comes out of the wonderland, she sees the world through different eyes. And this is why we need to read to discover ourselves as well as discover the world. Those governments that find literature and art dangerous are the ones with totalitarian mindsets. Once you have a totalitarian mindset, you don't want many voices. They become dangerous to you. And novels especially, but all literature and art, are full of variety. The totalitarian mindsets want everything to be safe and secure. They don't want anything unexpected. And art and literature are full of the unexpected. So, and there's freedom of speech, and at the center of literature is the pursuit of truth. And truth is the most dangerous thing in the world, because once you know the truth, then you cannot remain silent. And if you remain silent, you're complicit in the crimes that are being committed. And that is why writers only have their pens and pencils, or nowadays their computers, and yet they become the most dangerous people in the world to people who have guns and jails and tanks, and they can destroy us in a minute. They can destroy us, but they can't destroy what we leave behind, which is the works of imagination. I will even go further and say that this ability to put ourselves in the shoes of others, which we call empathy, is not only important to preservation of a democracy, but to preservation of us as human beings. Because what empathy does is to make you understand others, and through this understanding to connect to others. And we as human beings cannot live in a void. We cannot live alone. We constantly need connection. And the democratic society needs a lot of voices. Novel by nature is democratic. A great writer gives voice to every character, including the villain. You don't look at the villain and say, I want to eliminate him, like a totalitarian mindset says. You look at the villain and say, I want to understand him so that I won't become like him. And so empathy is at the center of being human and being democratic. You know, I cannot imagine a world without that wonderland in our backyards, because we need to constantly connect to the past, reflect and understand the present, and through that to be able to create the future, to predict the future. And we do that through that wonderland. I mean, it is miraculous that you and I, sitting here in Kuwait City, can connect to a man named Socrates, who lived thousands of years ago in a place we now call Greece. But yet we do that through that wonderland. We travel in time. Imagination and ideas are the only places where we defy time and space. And one other thing about it is that life is so transient, it's so fickle. Every moment we die. And we need, as Nabokov says, conclusive evidence that we have lived. And so literature and art become guardians of memory. They constantly remind you and I, sitting here in Kuwait City, that we have also been present thousands of years ago, and thousands of years after us, people will know about us because a book was written. So I think that I hope that no human being in the world will be able to destroy that wonderland. It has been tried. Just look at 20th century and look at fascism and look at communism. They burnt people, they gassed people, they killed poets, and yet poetry didn't die. I think poetry is part of being human as well. Well, most of my life I have been living abroad, and I always felt that I'm in a constant state of exile. And the only thing that made me feel at home back in Iran was language. Because we call language our mother tongue. So like our parents, we cannot forget the language. And when I went back to the States, or during my student years when I was in school and college in England and America, at first I was scared of the new language. Then I realized I'm lucky because I can constantly play with two languages, and I constantly can look at this new language through the eyes of the old language and bring in the lights and shades of my Persian into the English. Now, I'm not saying that I'm like some of these great writers that I love, but look at what Nabokov did with his Russian. He brought Russia into the English language, and he changed that language. That is what culture does. Through language, culture constantly expands your world and expands your identity. So now I'm not just an Iranian, but I'm an Iranian American, and I now have not just one mother tongue, but another one, a new one. And I feel lucky now, rather than in the old times when I used to complain. I know I'm happy about it. Well, one reason was because Lolita was so descriptive of the way I and my female students felt in Iran. At the core of Lolita, the idea of Lolita is that this man comes and rapes this little girl, but he wants to impose his own image of her on her. So he takes away her identity. And with taking away her identity, he takes away her childhood and her future, her whole existence. As women in Iran, we felt that the Islamic regime was trying to take away who we were and replace that with what they wanted us to be. So we all became different images, not different images, uniform images of what the Islamic Republic wanted us to be. And that is why I felt reading Lolita in Tehran created a bond between my students, my female students, and Lolita. And I sort of went based on the reactions to Lolita and called it reading Lolita. In my book, Republic of Imagination, where I talk critically of America, I always felt that Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn is like the ancestor, literary ancestor of American literature. A part of it was because Mark Twain even wrote a sort of a literary independence from British literature, which at that time most American writers tried to aspire to. He created a new language, and he created two new protagonists, Jim the slave and Huck Finn the orphan. And those marginal characters became so central to American literature. So much of great American literature is about marginals who come to the center because of fiction, but they are marginals because of the society. But as for my other home, Iran, I feel that that Iranian heritage lies in its poetry. Poetry is so central, to the way Iranians talk, the way they feel. I always like to say that when the new regime came to power, they could bring down the statues of the king, and they wanted to bring down the statue of poet like our epic poet Ferdowsi, and they couldn't, because Iranian people would not allow them to bring down the statue or change the name of the street after Omar Khayyam, because they didn't like it. So Iranian identity is its poetry. It goes beyond just literature and being an ancestor for literature. They are ancestors to who we are as Iranians. My father used to tell me, this is an ancient country, and it has been invaded so many times, and so many foreign rulers have ruled this country. And the only thing that makes us feel Persian is the poetry. We still read Ferdowsi's epics, or Maulana Rumi or Hafiz, as if they are still alive. We are contemporary. So I cannot think of Iran without thinking of its poet. Oh, that is hard. Oh, Nabokov, I can't. Nabokov, I can't describe. He is my mischievous friend and ally, but mischievous, very mischievous. You see, you bringing in all the authors that I love so much. I cannot talk about them in this manner, but I love her irony. She, on the surface, she's very prim and proper, but inside, she is naughty and sharp and critical. Hafiz Shirazi is the one who tells my fortune. I open him up and he tells me where I am, who I am, and where I will be and who I will be. Omar Khayyam, I always feel as if I want to travel with him. I want to hold his hand and walk the universe, and he will take me to the sky and he'll bring me back. The miracle in Wizard of Oz is that there is a hurricane at the heart of a place called Kansas, which brings you to one of the most amazing wonderlands in the world. Oh, I so much love Pinocchio. Not just the nose, but no, one word for Pinocchio, two words for Pinocchio: being human, becoming human, becoming human. Madness of love, or love of madness. He is the pure poet. I don't think anyone can be as pure as Maulana. Ah, the love of my life. There is beauty, and there is a lot of tears, tears and beauty. I don't know her, no idea. I love being here with you in this amazing, amazing wonderland that you have created in Kuwait City. I would like to thank you and all my new Kuwaiti friends whom I connected through you and your bookstore. Thank you so much.